Okay, so welcome everyone. That's a JupyterLab called January 15th. Link to the agendas in the chat. I see there are some items in the agenda. Mike, I see first items from yourself. Would you like to go kind of like present it?
Mike, you appear muted on our side.
Yep, same. I actually thought it's my volume, my sound that is problematic.
Okay, is it better?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. Okay, starting with something positive, I've opened a pull request to fix scrolling on undo redo and selection restoration. So basically, when you go back in time and want to restore your changes, usually you want your cursor or selection to jump back where it was. This is the behavior in basically every single editor out there. Unfortunately, when RTC was implemented in JupyterLab 4 a couple of years ago, this broke, and editing larger files has become basically unbearable. At least like trying to, in Notebook that wasn't very bad because you have cells and each cell is a small self-contained editor, but if you are trying to edit files, that was a significant bottleneck. And the reason for why this was not working was because we were using a simplification of the Code Mirror Whitedock plugin, and someone implementing that incorrectly assumed that we don't need the full thing and the view plugin. And I know that because they left a comment saying that we don't need that because we have the key bindings for Ctrl-Z, Ctrl-Y, managed by JupyterLab itself. Now, it turns out that this plugin was also doing some other important things like selection restoration, and since half a year ago also the scrolling bit. But in order to implement that, I had to basically copy and paste vendor.code because the rest of the code was vendored, and because like basically there were identity dependencies. So my question is for anyone on this call who might remember or might have been part of the RTC effort for JupyterLab 4, is there any other reason for vendoring Whitedock? Could we just switch in the next version and depend on the Code Mirror next Whitedock or YJS binding? Maybe Whitedock is incorrect term, maybe it should be YJS binding.
Don't we listen on window on capture anyway and could prevent that binding if we like if that's the only problem, can we already preempt it if we wished?
Sorry, what?
Our key event listeners, they're on like the window object and they're on capture. So they're like the first thing that get it. Like, yep. Wouldn't we get it and be able to intercept anyway?
So there isn't a problem with the bindings. So bindings can be used in two different meanings: key bindings and binding of the collaborative functionality to the editor itself. So the bindings for collaborative thing had optional key bindings, and we can use the upstream version of RTC bindings without key bindings. That's not a problem at all. So my proposal is to, in the next version, for which we'll have more time, maybe 4.5, to just depend on the upstream package rather than try to vendor that code, unless there is any other reason why we shouldn't be doing that.
I finished building JupyterLab from source.
Thanks, computer. I don't know if there's a reason not to, but it certainly sounds like the right thing to do if at all possible, right? Clearly, like what's in place now was answering some need, but let's, is there an issue in Jupyter Collaboration on this?
There is not. There is only an issue in JupyterLab because the code lives in JupyterLab.
Okay, I think probably, I don't know for sure, but probably David Rochard might know about this. So, and he'll be on the server call tomorrow. Whether you're there or not, if there's an issue, I'm happy to bring it up there and ask him, but I don't know an answer myself.
Okay, thank you for that. So quickly jumping to the next topic, because there's a couple of more and new agenda items are showing up as I speak. There is lots of pull requests coming into the queue on JupyterLab, and help in reviewing those would be appreciated. The good thing is that the pull requests coming in are, for the large part, not very complex. Some of them are, but many are small quality improvements of life or small documentation improvements. And anyone can help with the review here. Please do. One of these requests, other than the scrolling, is trying to fix how the Windows Notebook behaves when cells change height on scrolling. And this is a pretty tricky thing. If anyone is interested in what we should do, I proposed stabilizing cell height. I link the pull request on the agenda. Don't want to discuss that further, but I'm not sure if it's the right approach to proceed. If you're interested in this, please check out this PR and leave some feedback, because I don't know if I should keep exploring that or look for a different solution. And on a similar vein to collaboration, and there is a bug where completer gets triggered when another person is typing. I believe this is not intended. I will be looking into a way to add an annotation to changes to avoid the tab completer showing up if someone else is typing. Other than that, I wanted to again discuss the topic of the changing, of going into the beta with 4.4. I think we can discuss the service manager part when we get to Jeremy. Yeah, let's discuss this if we have time at the end. Maybe we could go and triage all the issues in beta and all the pull requests. So that's all from me for now. Andrew, if you want to start your part.
Thanks, Mike. So I wanted to, I have two topics to talk about, and both are issues in Jupyter Collaboration. Because other people contributed to these issues who are present at this call or usually come to this call, and there is no separate Jupyter Collaboration call, I thought it it's a good opportunity to discuss these things. If you don't think so, please let me know. So okay, the first one is this issue. Let me send the link to it in the chat. And I could share my screen, I guess. Let me see. Share my screen. So it's this issue. You might have seen it, right? So with certain conditions, when JupyterLab and RTC are installed, like notebooks created previously would not be opening, and we would just see this like death spiral, so to speak. So I found a reliable way to introduce it. So essentially, you need to install some package that uses Jupyter Collaboration 2, and then like in the same folder, install and try to use a package that uses Jupyter Collaboration 3. And so we have talked in these problems about the DB file being faulty and being a problem. And David Burchard mentioned like a DB migration logic, and that he thinks it's not faulty. So while being able to like reliably reproduce this bug, I also looked into the DB deeply, and it's not getting like moved. So when Jupyter Collaboration 3 is installed in this reproduction path, like move DB logic, the DB update logic does not go through because DB like user version is still 2 and not 3. So yeah, I kind of hope that David Burchard might be here at this call because he definitely like has a large expertise on this. But if you guys think, because I wasn't able to pin like why exactly that happens. I have like a theory why that happens, because like database move logic checks for the existence of particular table and particular like a constant in it, right? So if that would not exist, like the table or constant would not exist or would be named differently, that might be the reason. But yeah, looking for like more people to look into this. Okay, so I see that David Q is typing some comments. Should we discuss?
Yeah.
We can discuss this now.
Yeah, I just want to offer some context on this issue. I'm not as familiar as you are, Andre, but I do know about the YStore file because last year I spent a couple of months researching Jupyter Collaboration, reading through all the code bases. And one thing that struck me as peculiar is that we're defaulting to always having this .jupyter ystor.db file. And what this database file actually contains is it basically contains all of the YJS updates for a document in a persistent in a SQLite database. The issue with this is that every time the server extension starts, it's going to read this database of basically YJS updates for every RTC document which gets opened. And this, in my opinion, this is actually not a good behavior to default to. Because the only additional capability this really provides is that your undo and redo history is persisted. But if you don't need that, then the content of the file, like when you start the server, that's the starting point. We don't need to save all of the patches that led up to that, by default at least. I don't think that there's any use. I don't think users are demanding that we have persistent undo redo history across like server restarts. Like I don't know of any editor which allows for that. And I think given that, right, the risk that and complexity that this Jupyter YStore introduces really outweighs like any benefit. And in my opinion, the benefit of this is pretty minimal. And we don't need this YStore database at runtime either, because the way YJS works is that all of the YJS updates are stored in memory. by the YJS implementation, both on the server side and in the front end. So given all this, I think we need to have an open issue to track just removing this by default. And I know that Jupyter collaboration right now, there's going to be another major release happening soon, right? I think it's still an alpha or beta pre-release, but I believe Mike Krasowski, you were the one who opened a PR that fixes one of those major issues. I forgot. But that's sort of kicking off the V4 branch for Jupyter collaboration. And I think like, you know, given that major releases are a rare opportunity to sort of break stuff, I would say like we should also explore this as part of that. What do you other think? What do other people think about this?
I don't, so like, I think it would be nice to have a discussion about this. Like, it's
Yeah.
a solution for sure, but also it's removing a feature. I see Mike has a hand up.
I think I agree with some of the arguments for not creating another dot file by default if it provides little benefit. I also see the benefit of the undo and redo history being persisted across server restarts or when server crashes. I think this is a crucial part of the experience towards we are heading with server side execution, that the state is preserved even if something goes wrong on the front end or on the back end. So maybe there could be a better default for most users, while also a possibility to still have this file without completely removing that implementation for possibly Jupyter Hub deployments or something like that.
Aaron?
Well, I think that undo redo history needs to be decoupled from the canonical source of a document. Undo redo history is like git commit history. If you have the current snapshot and you lose all the git history, you have lost something, but the canonical content still does exist. So I think it should basically be the case that you always get the file. And if this database is corrupted, it just deletes the file. You lose undo redo history. That's unfortunate, but if the same thing happens with the state database, if it's not there, it just gives you an empty one. It doesn't break the experience. So if you have a broken file, instead of a broken experience, you should just reset the undo redo stack. I don't think we should like not have it. I just think we should gracefully fail and delete the thing and move on.
Well, yeah, I feel like that kind of is like optimizing for failure though, right? Like we're kind of like, it's like, oh, well, we're doing this thing that might break some of the time and we're not really like finding the root cause. We don't really know what the root cause is because of just the complexity of the implementation. And then it's like, you see what I'm saying? Like it's kind of optimizing for failure. And another reason I'm against having a persistent YStore database that tracks all the YJS updates is that even in the best case scenario where the database always works, it's always loaded, and it's always being written to properly. In the best case, this database is kind of a disk leak. Like YJS update, the way YJS works is like nothing ever gets deleted. Everything is like the sequence of updates where if you delete something, it actually just marks a previous update as deleted, but the update doesn't go away. So like this database is only going to grow in size. Like if you keep the server running for a while, it's only going to grow. It doesn't, the size only goes up.
No, that's not true. It's got a built-in strategy. Well, no, sorry. It supports a strategy of deciding every 100th time or something, I'm going to collapse the bottom to 1 or something. You can do this. It's built in, but it's your responsibility to. If left to just collect, yes, of course it'll grow, but we should probably make some strategy where we say we care about the 1,000 most recent, but beyond that, we're just going to compress them all down to one so that it never gets bigger than 1,000.
Right. Is that implemented? Because
I think it is implemented, but I think the YJS supports that. It's like we should implement that. That's how we contain it instead of not using it. We just contain it.
I think but YJS is like mainly designed to work in memory. Like this is like, yes, like YJS technically supports it in the sense like all YJS updates are serializable and you can store them in any database, right? But I think like just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean we should, right? Like this isn't a use case that's really documented at all into YJS documentation as far as I'm aware of. And it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. Like YJS works in memory. And yes, you can have like a database where we're constantly like squashing all of the YJS updates. And if we fail to load all the YJS updates when we open a new file, and then we delete that section of the database. But again, like I feel like this is introducing a lot of complexity by default for a use case, which I think really only applies to like what Mike Krasowski was talking about, which is like these enterprise deployments where you need that everything to be persisted because the server might crash, right? But I think for like the average user scenario where I just don't see the benefit. I feel like losing the undo redo history after a restart is a very sensible default behavior. And if reducing that complexity and not having that behavior by default improves the reliability of Jupyter collaboration, I think we need to take that. In my opinion, like right now, Jupyter collaboration, I would argue it's a bit unstable. And I think that does, I think reducing the risk of installing it is definitely takes like a higher priority than persisting the undo redo history across restarts.
Well, is it undo redo history only, or is it document history? Right? Because we have a document slider feature to show you revisions of your doc. Google Docs has a history feature. Like if it's just undo redo as a user experience, okay. But if it's actually the history, if that's where the history is coming from, we kind of need that as part of the core experience.
Even further, imagine that there is a user who suspended the computer and is coming with the old state, and we've unmerged changes like 10 hours later and after 1 or 2 server restarts. For that use case, the algorithm might need to replay all the changes to be able to merge the state.
That would only happen that would only be relevant if the server also restarted in the time that the user was away. Yeah. I mean, that's like a real, I feel like that's an edge case. I mean, I don't know, like maybe this is something you all have run into, but like that's pretty extreme, right? Like we're talking about a network interrupt lasting multiple hours, and during that network interruption, the server also gets restarted. Like,
well, users close
yeah.
the lids on the laptops pretty often or go for a break, so that part is not extreme, and we are just trading one instability which is related to like what happens if major version changes and there's a breakage, for another on the runtime. So yeah, we should discuss that more and what are the trade-offs in an issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's the next step because it does seem like we don't have consensus quite yet about what's the best direction here. I will, like, one last point I will make is like, if we do have other extensions which provide capabilities that sort of like replay, that require that like persistent history of updates, where you're sort of like, you can like drag a slider and you can watch the document evolve. In my opinion, that will be implemented as like a separate extension. And the separate extension, it can
it's already
configure.
part of
It's already
Jupyter
in there.
collaboration.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
it's a feature of the document now.
It's
And it's like kind of cool. Like we should want to give people this experience. We should just fix the bugs in it, I would say.
it's like
maybe there's
default.
something.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, is there a bug in what Andrew posted in the migration code? Is the migration code not being called at some point? It should be called. Like, this should be fixable. We changed the format of our extension settings system once, and we just wrote a plugin that took the old format and retranslated to the new format, and it was like transparent to users. We should be able to handle something like this.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we can handle all of these. I agree. It's just like there is a sort of like there is a trade-off to be made with like complexity, right? Like complexity introduces risk. And like, of course, we can spend more time to like sort of bulletproof all the complexity here, but it like I think like we should seriously like it really depends on like the perceived value of the features that a persistent YJS update database provides. Like it's I think that's really the crux of the issue, and that's like the value judgment that we're sort of debating. Like for example, with this like document timeline, right? Like should the starting point of every document timeline really just be when there's not a single update in the document? Like I would imagine like as a user, the start of that timeline is right when I open that document for the first time on that server. And then like as updates are made, then I see like the state evolve across like this server session. But like if the server restarts, like I don't know. Like, do we really want to save all of that? I think that's
I mean, I still
yeah.
think of this as the solution to this is that collapse, right? I'm sorry, Mike, you have your hand up. I just started talking without thinking.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, I wanted to say that this nicely highlights the distinction between the user expectation on the local machine. Yes, I wouldn't expect the slider to go beyond when I last opened the file versus Google Docs kind of experience, where I do expect the history to go all the way back to the empty state. So again, Jupyter Hub kind of deployment, I think this file should be preserved. That's like a university or workplace kind of setup enterprise.
Mhm.
Local system, maybe not by default if it's more error prone, and the administrator on Jupyter Hub will be better skilled to solve cases like
Right.
we are running into versus a simple user of JupyterLab desktop. So not simple, but well, less technically savvy.
And that kind of dives into the question of like, what default should we choose? Right? Like, do we default to what's better for somebody running JupyterLab locally, or should we default to what's better for an enterprise deployment? And I think like there's a bit of ambiguity there, at least to me. I don't know if this is something you all have debated before, but yeah, these are good questions for sure. And even if we squash all the updates though, like then if you're squashing all of the old updates, how is that any different from just deleting like the YStore database? Like
Well, because I'll have the 1,000 most recent commits. I'll just lose the 10,000 before that, but 1,000 is still pretty big, right? So I still get to pull this slider back to a time long enough ago that whatever I want's probably still there, but it's not infinite.
I see. Yeah, you know that's I agree with that. Like I think like the two questions here are like one is like can we explore changing the default? Because like in my opinion, if we know that like it's less risky to just not use this, I think like giving users more stability when using Jupyter Collaboration, that should be a first priority. Like, I'm not sure if we should wait on like refactoring all of the entire YStore implementation before giving users a more reliable experience. And the second question is like, how can we improve the YStore stability? But yeah, we can add a configurable now and switch it off in a major version. Mike Trzaski just posted that. I think like that's I think that's what we should explore. Like in the next major version, this is a configurable, but we changed the default value to just not using the YStore.
Yeah, so to add more context, there is already a document TTL time to life.
I think I added that.
And it is kind of allows you to do something like that, but we probably want something on the higher level to not create the SQLite at all. And I think pull requests like that would go straight in. Now we'll debate later at which point we should switch that default behavior and confirm whether we really want that or not.
Yes, absolutely. Let me just quickly open. Yeah. All right. I think this is good. I'll open these issues and follow up and ping you and Darian and anybody else who wants to be pinged. All right. I think that's enough discussion on this topic. Let's please give other people some time. Andrew?
Awesome. So the next one I wanted to discuss is also Jupyter collaboration issue. So let me paste the link into the chat. So it's I can probably share my screen as well. It's an issue created by Mike, which proposes to add a pin to JupyterLab to Jupyter collaboration package. And in particular, in comments, it is discussed that it can be done like for better, so like not to pin for the whole Jupyter collaboration package, but for this sub package that only includes some of the sub packages. So I wanted to ask if there are any downsides, because in the issue that was created like a month ago, oh, okay, not a month ago, just a week ago. So are there any downsides? Are there any reasons not to do it? Because it seems that it does not seem there are a lot of upsides to it. It's a mechanism that would allow us to specify which versions of JupyterLab, which versions of JupyterLab the current version of Jupyter collaboration is compatible with, right? And we've seen a lot of problems due to this incompatibility. So it seems like a very valuable mechanism that would help us, and we could even like, if we would want to clarify older versions, support for JupyterLab in older versions of Jupyter collaboration, we could even like backport this mechanism to older versions. Seems like a very nice mechanism. So I'm like looking for more context and maybe for more inputs into the discussion. Thank you.
So very briefly to clarify, we would not want to pin individual packages, but just the Jupyter collaboration meta package. And I think that we do not know of any disadvantage of doing that. So in my opinion, it's one line change. It's a change that should have been done in the previous major release, but somehow it was missed. So if you want to open a PR, I would approve it. I would run it by David just in case. And I think we can proceed with that. As to backporting and how effective that would be, I am not sure. I would ask a packaging expert. Unfortunately, Nick is not on the call right now.
Doesn't adding the version pin only in the meta package, that only affects like when you're doing a development install locally, right?
No, this is not a meta package in a monorepo sense. That's actually like an umbrella package, which has the only purpose of installing this 3 or 4 other packages. And that's done this way because users might want to use Jupyter Server YDoc without using the collaboration UI. And conversely, conversely, they can use in like Jupyter's Jupyter collaboration UI without using Jupyter Server YDoc because there is no Jupyter Server in Jupyter's.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about like, are you talking about the actual Jupyter collaboration package then?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
So,
I mean,
yeah, I was going to say, like, historically, we were trying to do more the opposite, like trying to not depend on JupyterLab, but that was mostly motivated by trying to run things in WebAssembly. And the example of this was the cookie cutter that used for extensions for JupyterLab, which had a dependency on JupyterLab at the time, and it was removed to allow for this, like using extensions, for example, in WebAssembly. And I suspect that's why we don't have also the I mean, it's more of a like a side effect of this, that we don't have a dependency on JupyterLab currently for Jupyter collaboration. But in the case of Jupyter collaboration specifically, I guess it still makes sense to have it, to add the dependency on JupyterLab, because if someone wants to use these packages in whatever other environment without JupyterLab, then they could also just depend on the other packages, right? The ones that are part of this meta package. So probably if the benefits are higher for end users by having this pin, then let's do it.
I mean, just to close this off, like it sounds technically correct. Like we do depend on certain like releases of JupyterLab, and also like as long as it doesn't introduce a circular dependency, I mean, I don't think there's any issue with that. I agree.
Awesome, sounds good. I'll look into opening APRs then. And that's it for me. I've seen there are some points by Jeremy. Also, we're at 46 minutes. So there's also a next call, DEI. I thought we could stay, like after this call, we can add this next call. Yeah, I don't know. We could kind of talk on Zulip and find time when we can do it, check it before the next call. Jeremy, what would you say?
For the Zoom channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do it afterwards if you want. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Then would you like to go with your agenda item?
Yeah, try to be quick. So I've posted 2 links to 2 PRs on JupyterLab. One is the one that Mike mentioned earlier today about customizing the service manager via plugins. So I spent more time this week to bring it to a state where it can be reviewed. And I think it's the case now. So if you would like to have a look, then please do. I think it would be great to have it in 4.4. So initially I was thinking it would also be great to test it with something like Galata, but it seems like it's a bit complicated to do it with Galata, just trying to swap plugins, because we don't even have this in place for like regular plugins. So I think the way to test it would be to either link packages manually if you want to try it, or later via the alpha directly if this gets merged. So yeah, this one and another one that I spent some time trying to improve is being able to customize the prompt cell of the code consoles is a position in JupyterLab. So there's quite a bit of feedback. It says that having the prompt cell at the bottom of a code console is not great because then you always have to jump between the top and the bottom when you write code in the code console. So this PR lets user configure where the prompt cell can be positioned. It could be left, right, top, or bottom, but also adds a couple of other settings, such as like clearing the history every time you execute the code cell, hiding the banner. What else do we have? Like removing the input when the cell is executed. So I think the main change this brings compared to the previous version of the code consoles is that now it's using a split panel, because then you can resize the amount of space that the prompt cell is taking on screen. And it's also a bit nicer to have split panel when you have the code cell on the left or on the right. So if we want to go ahead with this, I think that's what users will notice mostly, even if we keep the prompt cell at the bottom of the code consoles. This is only additive changes, and it's quite of a nice feature to let users configure the code consoles as they want. I was thinking it would be nice to get it in 4.4. So if you have time to play around with it or just look at the screencast, that would be great. If we need more time to talk about it, then I think it would also be fine to postpone it to the next release. But yeah, just wanted to share one. And let me see. Yeah, other items. I opened an issue on the console repo to track all of the steps we need to go through a new SSC for the Jupyter Frontends. So it's beginning of 2025, and I think it would be nice to start this process soon, to have time to do the voting and then first the nomination and then the voting. So I was thinking of maybe doing it soon, but if someone would like to do it, then that would also be fine. So please let me know if you would like to take care of that SSC nomination process for the Jupyter Frontends sub-project. And there's another thing for the Jupyter Frontends. Okay, see, okay, there it has his raise.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, can you just tell people how much work it's been to be on the SSC so that, like the amount of commitment you make maybe is scaring people from running for it, but it might not be as bad as they think.
It's not that much work. Yeah. No, really, it's really not just. I think it's mostly a point of contact for communication. So it's really not that much work. I think the whole nomination process is the much more work than the actually being the SSC. Yeah, Andrew, you have also your hand raised, I just see.
Jeremy, I wanted to quickly clarify. So are you looking for like reviews for the customizing service manager PR and changing the code console prompt cell position?
Yes, please. If you want to review, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify for myself. Thank you.
Yeah, I think they would be great to have in 4.4. And since we were talking about the beta cycle, then I think it could be a good time to look into these. Yeah, I had one last item. It's about the EC election. Just wanted to bring it up here in case you missed the email about it, but normally all of the council members should have received an email about this. Yeah, so if you haven't, please let me know. I think that's all I had. I'm happy to talk about any of this now or later if you want. The next one I see on the agenda is Nicola. So Nicola, if you want to continue.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to quickly highlight that we forked the JupyterLab deck in JupyterLab contrib organization, and it has been renamed JupyterLab slideshow. So just for the context, the JupyterLab deck is a way to build slide from a notebook. It has been maintained by Nick Bolweg, and it seems that he didn't want to maintain it anymore, so we already talked about that in a previous call. So we forked it, and now it should be compatible with JupyterLab 4.1 and upper, and Notebook 7.1 and upper. So that's it.
Awesome work. This looks pretty cool.
There's no one else on the agenda. Should we stop the call and have any further conversation without the recording in the last 4 minutes?
I'll stop the call then now, if there is nothing else you want to discuss on record, so the sound will play.